5, I am so excited that we are catching up with Nicky Spinks. So we first spoke with Nicky on August the 7th, 2018, when Nicky came on to share more about being the first person ever to run a double Ramsey round in the Scottish mountains. And just to remind you, that's 116 miles, it's 48 peaks, it's 57,000 foot of ascent, which she did in a time of 55 hours and 56 minutes. During that first podcast episode, Nicky also shared more about her early years and some of the different races that she has done. Now, Nicky, for people who haven't listened to our first episode, I'd love for you to tell them just a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a fell runner and a farmer, and I think I started running about 2001, foot and mouth year, I always think, and everyone remembers that year as well. And then I sort of built up from 4-mile fell races to doing the Bob Graham in 2005, and then went to do the Paddy, Barkley and the Charlie Ramsey. And then seemed to get, perfect my training, I think, and I got faster. So then I went round to do the records of those rounds, and then on to a few 100-mile races, and then the doubles of the UK rounds.
Tell us more about your passion for running. Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think it just comes from being out in the mountains. And I mean, actually, during this lockdown, it was weird because I was obviously running from home, and I got a golf course near me, and I was doing my speed work around the golf course because there were no golfers, which is nice. But I could look across onto Bleaklow and just wish I was running around there instead. So, and I think, and as soon as I could, I went back out onto Bleaklow, and and I've really enjoyed just running back out in the mountains, and just that. There's always a better view, and you're sort of more solitary, and you can go, you can go where you sort of like in England with the right to roam. You don't have to stick to footpaths and things, which is something that I really like doing.
When we last spoke to you in August, you were actually training and preparing for the Ultra Tour Monte Rosa, which happened in September 2018. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about what the race is, what was involved, and how your training went for that race and how the race went.
Yeah, it's one of those really good races that you don't get every year. I always think that, I don't know, maybe 1 in 50 races will actually go completely to plan, where your training goes to plan. You arrive and everything up to the race day goes to sort of plan, and you actually, and you set off, and it just all falls into place. Your legs work, and your eating works, and your head works. Your kit works. And that was Monte Rosa, actually. I feel now I could ramble on about it for hours, because it's just, it was a lovely dream. Obviously, it was, I can't remember, 37 hours. So you can't have a perfect time for 37 hours. So yeah, I had my moments of tiredness and sickness and whatnot. But generally, everything just, I soon got over those. And so I think about halfway, I decided to sort of up my pace a bit. So after about 50 miles, yeah. And Monte Rosa is really special in that they only have about, I think the entry limit's about 400. So she got about 320 when I did it. So a lot of the time you're sort of on your own with the markings, which aren't like the UTMB. So you've got to keep your wits about you because they don't overmark anything. And you go up some really stunning sort of glaciers. And it was just the race that I really, really enjoyed doing because of the scenery, as well as, just being on my own a lot of the time, which is, it's funny, I find I can race quite easily on my own. Some people need people to race, but I picture them. Anyway, yeah, so about halfway, I think I became first woman. I overtook the woman who was first. And then from then on, I just had a really strong race, running through all the checkpoints really well. Finding they had lots of, like the checkpoints had some special sort of treats on them and stuff that I wasn't expecting. I think I was 7th overall in the end, which again was amazing to sort of beat loads of blokes and win the ladies, yeah. So yeah, it was a really cracking race, was Monte Rosa.
How can you push yourself to go that much faster when you've already banked 50 miles?
I mean, before the 50 miles, I always make sure I don't get out of breath, because I always feel that you're stressing your body a lot more if you're not giving it enough oxygen. So not getting out of breath, especially as the Monte Rosa goes up to altitude quite a lot. So I didn't want to get altitude sickness. I hadn't been out there and acclimatized or anything. So I was very careful. When we went up to sort of over 2.6, I was wearing my Alti, and I just used to sort of back off a bit to make sure that my breathing didn't get like too laboured, really. You can't do 37 hours with labouring breathing. And that really helped. So, but once I went over the 50 miles, I just sort of pushed it a little bit further, a little bit. So I allowed myself to get out of breath a little bit. And then the eating. So I make sure I eat a lot in the first half. And then as it gets nearer the race, I know I've only got like 10 hours or 5 hours or 4 hours. So I can actually not have to push myself to eat so much. And then, with the pace, I think, and spend less time in the checkpoints as it goes through. Whereas most people, I think, if their energy levels are deteriorating, they have to spend more time in the checkpoints because they're trying to get some more energy in them.
I always remember when I was doing Marathon des Sardes, I'd sort of psych myself up before getting to the checkpoint. So it's almost like I knew exactly what I had to do when I got to the checkpoint to get in and then get out. I just didn't, because you can get sucked into like the void. And you mentioned talking about food, some special treats that were out. What sort of food were you eating while you were running and while you were on the move?
So on the Monte Rosa, you did get 4 drop bags, which is quite a lot. So I was able to put quite a lot of my own food in there, as well as relying on their food. So I had sort of rice puddings and fruit salads and some proper coffee, I think, as well. I put in flasks. So I think stuff like that is my usual stuff. I don't try new foods anymore very often. Although last year I did find dark chocolate covered coffee beans. They're my new favourite treat.
Do you think your body's like fat adapted now? Do you think you're burning fat when you're running, or are you eating sort of like when I say eating, like something going in your mouth like every 20 minutes? So it's almost like constant eating.
I try to keep it constant eating because I think that's the way to keep your stomach from working. I think if you don't feed it, it hasn't got anything to work on and it just shuts down. So I always try with that. And I do find that if you don't eat within, for an hour, then when you do eat, that's when you do feel sick because your stomach stopped working. So, I'm definitely a more regular eater, a believer in that.
Do you have gels as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, on a normal fell race, I'd probably just only have gels and some jelly babies. It's just full on sugar, but you can't cope with that for 100 miles. So I tend to probably have maybe 2 an hour, or it depends how long I have to carry them for, because they weigh an absolute ton, really. That's what I'm always conscious of. You're carrying quite a lot of weight for not many calories, but they do work when you need them. So it would depend on the climbs. I would take one maybe if I had a massive climb to do of like 1,000 or 2,000 meters, I would take one about 10 minutes before I started the climb.
And are you climbing with poles or not? Are you is it more of a scramble, or is it more of like a fast-paced hike, or is it full-on sort of running?
Well, again, so at the beginning of the race, I'd make myself walk up all the climbs, or I would try. I mean, it's really hard if you've got loads of people running past you and the climb's it's only a gentle ascent. But I think to try and save some energy, I don't run up them then. And I use my poles from the start, so I would be fast walking up. There wasn't that much technical climbing as such on Monte Rosa, but there were some big rocks where, you sort of hold your poles because you'd need your hands for the rocks. So I think generally uphill it's using the poles, especially if the terrain's good, like it was on the UTMB. You can get into a really good rhythm with your poles.
You said as well, the Ultra Tour Monte Rosa, it was one of those dream races where everything goes right. Normally that's not the case, and that problems, things don't go to plan, problems arise. And I'd love to hear more about planning for those problems. how do you plan to get a dream race where everything does go right when you've got so many things which are outside of your control? Is that something that is part of your planning and preparation?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, I start practicing with my kit, and well, almost ongoing. So if I've got a new rucksack or I want to try some different shoes or anything, then I'll practice. I mean, my races are usually in August, so I'll start sort of in June or whatever with, I'll buy the rucksack and I'll try the rucksack out, and so yeah, with everything like that, I mean, all my food and everything, I try it all out months in advance, not just straight away on the day. And then looking at the timings of the race, I would do that about June, July as well, just to sort of, I do myself a schedule, but rather than it's a pacing schedule, it's a schedule to tell me where I'm going to be in the dark and how many hours there are between each checkpoint, or how many hours I think there could be between each checkpoint, so that at least I leave one checkpoint knowing I've got like 2 hours, or I might have 6 hours, and it makes a massive difference to how long you spend in that checkpoint. So it's all things like that I work towards to having the perfect race. And it's when, like, I think my schedule on the Monte Rosa was actually spot on as well. So usually in these races, your schedule was a bit haywire because obviously you don't know whether they've changed the route, or the people's results that you've used, you don't really know whether they've had a sleep in a split or not. So so it's all a rough guide is the schedule. But no, the Monte Rosa one was actually pretty accurate.
As for me, as somebody who likes planning, that would have just made me so happy, having a schedule and just nailing it, like every time, reaching the checkpoints when you plan to reach the checkpoint, being in the dark when you plan to be in the dark, when you it must have been like quite a relief, like mentally, just to be like, yes, this is all coming together. Did that help sort of fuel the motivation and give you added confidence to to be able to up the pace and to push yourself further?
Yeah, I think so, because I knew that if I stayed on the schedule, I wouldn't have to go into a second night of darkness. So that always helps. That always gives you another, motivation to keep going and push the pace on. And actually, as you get through the race and the schedule is on time, you can trust it a bit more, so that you look at it and you believe it. Whereas if it's all over the place, you stop actually looking at it, because it's not. You might as well throw it out the window.
I watched an incredible, I suppose, documentary short film as well on you this year, called Last Woman Standing, the Barkley Marathon in 2019, which you headed over to do. I think you were the first British woman to head over there to do this famous race, the Barkley Marathon. But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about the Barkley Marathon, how this came about, and maybe when the seed was planted to go and do this, and also how you got in to do the race.
Yeah, it was back in 2012. I was doing the Dragon's Back, and about day 3 I got some sort of like shin splint thing, so I was like hobbling along on day 3, and I think we had 2 more days to go, and we just hooked up with two Americans, Big John and Little John. And so, of course, as we then spent the rest of the race together. So we were hobbling along, just sort of chatting away about everything. And Little John actually just said, "Oh, you'd be perfect for the Barkley." And I was like, "Well, what's that?" I hadn't even heard of it. So then obviously I Googled it when I got home, and that was when the seed was planted. But with it being in springtime and we're farmers, it's always been a really bad time for us to get away, because we're calving cows at that time. And then last year it came about, we were calving cows earlier and we could get away at that time. So both me and my husband were able to go over to Tennessee for it. I mean, as to entering it, well, the whole thing's just a big, massive game. Well, sort of a stressful game that Laz plays with everybody. Because you've got to find out how to enter, and then you've got to enter, and then you've got to wait to see if you're in. And then there's all sorts of other hoops that you've got to jump through to even get to the start line.
Did you enjoy that sort of the hoop jumping and like the weird stuff that you have to do to enter it? Because I've heard of, there's shirts, there's number plates, and the race costs like $1.60, and like all these sort of random things. And you also, there isn't. Well, actually, I presume that you do get told the start date, because isn't it just like, oh, it's sometime in March, sometime in late March, early April?
Yeah, so you do get told the start date once you're in, but that means you can't really plan anything until then. And I mean, the mind games, it depended on my mood, really. Yeah, sometimes I sort of like I laughed it off and I got on with it, whatever we were asked to do. And other times it was like, oh no, I'm too busy, I can't be doing this. I just want a race where I turn up and I read the map and I go. But not having a map I found quite hard. But then I just thought, well, it's just like doing an on-mountain marathon where you don't get the map until you turn up on the day, and it'll be fine. And that's when I sort of just shrug my shoulders and think, well, it is what it is, and you can't do anything about it. So concentrate on something else that you can do something about. Yeah, so it was good to turn up on and actually set off, because that's almost when the games stop. Yeah, I mean, Laz face to face, he's a lovely guy, and he wants not everybody to succeed, but he's put on a good race, and he wants us to sort of enjoy it as in a sort of way.
I mean, I'd love to know more about your planning and preparation for a race like this. I mean, what can you do in advance? So obviously, you've got the physical side of things with regard to training. There will be, the logistics in terms of, what kit and what equipment you need to take over with you. And then, the mental side of it, trying to understand what the race is and what's involved in it. I'd love for you maybe just to break down a little bit about each of those areas, from the physical training to the logistics to the mental side of the training, about learning about the race and what to expect.
Yeah, it was really like going into the unknown that first year. I knew the climbs were steep. I was already training for the double Paddy, so I used the same training really. I went to Wales and went on steep climbs, steep walking climbs. I mean, I knew there was a lot of forests, and you were going, well, it's all forests. But I thought, well, there's no point just bashing up and down forests in this country, because they're not going to be the same. But the steep, like heathery, tussocky climbs in this country, where you've actually you haven't got like a nice path to go up, because I knew you weren't going up nice paths over there. And I think I think my physical training went really quite well, because I was training for the Paddy, so I'd go to Wales and do legs, back-to-back legs. I'd just go do one leg and then turn around and come back. So mentally it was also very similar to the Barkley, in that you do some of the laps clockwise and some of them anti-clockwise, so you've got to get your head round just turning around and going the other way. And even though you're on exactly the same route, it doesn't look anything similar. So yeah, you can't. So I also got used to turning round as I was running and looking at the scenery from the other way and trying to memorize it so that I'd recognize it coming the other way. And then that was sort of the training. I read like loads of blogs and listened to loads of podcasts. I was just trying to get route information or information about the books, but that's all really hidden. You don't get any knowledge of where the books are. There is a bit of a description of what Laz gives out. It reminded me of the Long Distance Walking Association instructions, where there's just like pages and pages of it, and half of it's not that relevant. So you need to be really quite good at like when they say, oh, there's a church on the right, and you think, oh, I'm going to turn near the church on the right, and then they go, and it was built in 1820, and you're like, right, that's not actually, I don't need to know that. It's very interesting, but I think Laz's instructions were going to be a lot like that, with which they were, but obviously no churches out there. And I think, kit-wise, I made sure, because you have to carry all your own stuff for 12 or 10 or whatever hours, you need a reasonably big rucksack, and you need to know where everything is, because you could be out for 60 hours. So your brain's going to turn to mush a little bit. when I'm out training, I'll put everything in the same pockets. So my water's always on my right, my energy drink's always on my left. Compass is always in the same pocket, the map and everything like that, just so that it's automatic to find it when you haven't had sleep for 2 days, rather than having to tip your whole rucksack out every time you need everything. So I think that's probably, yeah. I mean, you don't know what time you're going to start, and I didn't think that was going to affect me as badly as what it did. I mean, I think I did sleep a little bit, but you get the 12 hours window of when you could start the race, and it starts at midnight. No, your 12 hours starts at sort of midnight, so you go to bed, but yeah, it's really weird to sleep when you could be up and off in an hour.
At the start, how much? So you got this 12-hour window where a conch is going to be blown to start the race, and you don't actually know the official start time. So you said that affected you. Was it almost like the adrenaline was there, like you're starting and it's trying to control the emotions, and how did you manage that?
Like any race, you've got the adrenaline, so that you control it by sort of knowing when you need to get up and what you need to do. And I think also in the campsite it was quite noisy. And I had a good book, so I think when I couldn't sleep, I just turned the light on and read a couple of pages of good book, put the book down, and then thought about the book when I was trying to go to sleep, and not about the fact that I might be running in an hour. But again, that's pretty hard.
Are you able to switch your mind off, or because it's almost like your mind, you can't relax? Was that what it was like?
Yeah, you can't relax your mind at all. So from the minute you set off, it's all, especially the first time you go. I never got there the second time, but there wasn't a second time this year. It was cancelled. But yeah, so the first time you go, no, you've got to be on it from as soon as you set off. You've got to be trying to memorise the route that you're going on. You've got the map and you've map reading, so you've got to keep that. But also, it's just like it's quite a good thing to. Like I latched on to Stephanie Case because it's quite a good thing for a virgin to latch on to a veteran, because they obviously know most of the route. Laz changes the route every year, but he doesn't change the whole route. So the veterans tend to know, say, 90% of the route, or 70 something like that %, depending on how much he's changed it. They also sort of understand Laz's instructions as to where the books are, and so it's much easier, as it is anywhere, to not navigate and to stick with somebody who knows where they're going. But even still, you can't stay with that person. You don't know you're going to be able to stay with that person for the whole time. So I was trying to learn all the route as we set off, and then obviously you're just trying to do. So you've got the navigating is a big, huge part of it, but then you've got to make sure you eat. And of course, when you're navigating, you're running with poles, and the terrain's really rough. It's not that easy to then not stop, but eat on the go as well. When you set off, you're not allowed any electronic devices at all, so no GPS or cameras or anything. So Laz gives you this watch which starts at 0 when you set off. So for the first day, you're mentally aware enough to. We started at 9:30 in the morning, so I was able to sort of add that on to the 0 time that but then after that it just becomes a nonsense. So you actually don't look at your watch at all. You've no idea what time of day or night really it is. So yes, when I say I did, so I only had a rough guess that I got back to camp at daylight on the next day, meaning that I'd been out for nearly 24 hours, nearly 20 hours. So it's really hard to actually, and I think although physically I wasn't that exhausted, mentally I was spent, because it's just mental talk all the time. You where we're going and what the books looks like next, and then obviously what I'm going to eat and everything on top of that.
So you don't even have a spot tracker?
No, you don't have anything.
What? I find that fascinating. Like, off you go into the woods. Like, I feel as though that's quite dangerous. Like, but just.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't had he hasn't had an accident. He's never had to call the mountain rescue out, because I think he vets the people that are coming in, and they all know that you've got to get yourself out. I mean, I think at any one point you're not actually more than probably 5 miles from a road if you went in a single direction, but that's still quite a long way. But it does make you run a lot more carefully. You know, nobody is careering down the mountain, because they all know that if they really sprain their ankle or break their leg, they're going to be there for a very long time, because Laz won't, he says he won't call mountain rescue out until after the 60 hours is up, because he expects everybody to just sort of haul themselves back into camp, and they've got 60 hours to go round. So yeah,
Guys,
it does make you're just more aware of that fact when you're running, so you're more careful. You're not really, I mean, everyone calls it a race, but you're not racing the people that you're with. You're racing the clock. All of you are racing the clock.
what was the reality like hearing that conch go, touching the yellow gate, heading off on your first lap? Can you take us back to that time?
Well, it was very much like I'd pictured it, because you could see so many pictures. I was really glad just to get off and start running, because it'd been months and months of like wondering what it's going to be like. And at least then, as soon as you've set off, your nerves go, and what you haven't got, and you've just got to get on with it as best as you can. So yeah, I think that was it. It was an immense relief to actually set off up the hill, and then realise it was way too hot for me. So yeah, that wasn't nice to realise how by the top of the first climb that I was sweating cobs, and it was just very, very warm that day. Just as the sun started to set, it got a bit cooler, and it was actually a relief then to feel, well, not cool, but at least not so hot. But we finished that loop at roughly 9:30 at night. And me and Billy, the Irish guy, we were still thinking it was way too hot. I mean, Steph, because she lives out in Afghanistan, she was in a full set of clothes and thinking it was quite cold, but not for us. But then that second loop, it just, within an hour, it changed, dropped about 20 degrees and started raining on us. We'd all set off at the same time, me, Billy and Steph, with another guy, Michael. And none of us had taken enough clothes, so we put all we had on within an hour and a half, and then just kept going and trying to stay warm and trying to stay on the navigation. And we all went rather quiet, because I think we were all quietly thinking this is not going very well, and yeah, I think all three of us knew we were going to have to pull out at some point, but neither of us wanted to say so or anything. So yeah, we did 5 books before we got to a point that Steph, who really knew the route better than me and Billy did, she said, this is like the make or break point, really. If we go any further, we're just going way, it's going to take us hours to get back. As it was, it took us 4, but it was that point where we can drop out here, or we're in it forever. So that, yeah, we dropped out because we were absolutely frozen.
How was that point, like coming to that decision? Is it a hard decision to make? Is that sort of an internal battle that you have about, do we carry on? Do we not? Like, how did you sort of rationalise it?
When the actual point came, you're just ready to go down. Your whole body's been telling you that it wants to have a warm shower and go to bed. It's it's cold, so that sort of instinct in your self-preservation instinct has kicked in, and you've been fighting it for like 2 hours anyway. By the time somebody actually says, then you're completely ready to cane it and go down. I mean, I couldn't have felt my hands for about 2 hours. I couldn't get any food out because I couldn't get them to work. I couldn't eat anything, so I'm not going to warm up. That's what's happened. So in the end that you can't carry on. It's not really a decision, actually, when it comes to it.
Taking the time to reflect back on the race, what do you think you learned from going through that experience?
I mean, I'd been watching the weather, and actually I should have taken more notice of all the other years' worth, because maybe only 1 in 5 years they actually get nice weather for the whole of it. Generally, they get some either proper thunderstorms or it turns really cold and it rains and snows on people. So I think there was that sort of point. I mean, I'm really fastidious about watching the weather and making sure that even though it's 30 degrees in the checkpoint, if I've got a drop bag and I think it's going to drop to 10 or -10, I'll take enough clothes. And we didn't do that. We were all too keen to get back out of the checkpoint. Well, the one checkpoint, the start finish, and we just took 10 minutes eating and stuff, and didn't really, and put some extra clothes in because it was nighttime, but not enough to keep us through the night when it sort of dropped down to below zero. And it took me quite a long time to actually figure out what I'd need to do that, because you've been at like 25 degrees all day, sweating cobs. And although I had a change of clothes, I didn't have a shower. I'm still colder. I'm still sweaty, which dries on you, which makes you feel colder. You've done 12 hours. You haven't had any sleep, so you're going to feel the cold some more. But eventually I did sort of think, right, yeah, if I took this thermal and those thermal leggings and put all this, like my thick this on and those gloves, then I would have been all right. And then there's my support, because my support did say to me at the checkpoint, they did say, "Are you taking this?" And I just said no, and they didn't then question me. But I told them for the second year, I said, you can be more, I want you to be more forceful. If you think I'm doing something wrong, you just tell me you're taking this. It's going to, watch the weather, and it's going to do this and take this. So I think that's probably, but you see, I also know that maybe next year it won't be the weather. It could be something else. It could be blisters, or it could be sickness, or, you've got to try and prepare for all these things going wrong.
Yeah. Like we talked about, like the mental challenge. At the end of the day, you're physically getting exhausted, but mentally, because needing to have that level of concentration for that many hours when you're out in a different environment and you're trying to memorize, the route and the places, and then looking back because you'll be doing it in a different way. And, there's so much going on that actually anything to relieve the mental pressure with somebody saying, no, take this, you need this is going to help you. You actually need some, because you can't think at that point. Like it's not, when I say you can't think, what I mean is you can't, what's the word?
Yeah, I've always related it to having jet lag. There's nothing actually wrong with you. You just feel shocking and your brain won't work. If you went into a shop and you were given more than two things, like there was a choice of more than two, you just stand there and look at it, don't you? It just seems to fog your brain because you can't make decisions. And then even if you do make decisions, you tend to make the wrong one.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing it again, aren't you?
I'm hoping so, yeah. So it was, I can't remember, it was about 2 weeks before in spring, before our lockdown. I can't remember the timings, but I was due to go this year in spring, and then America decided that they were banning all flights, and then they decided they weren't allowing people in from the UK. But my support out there was already not happy with me going. And I was also thinking, well, I don't want to get stuck out there because of, COVID-19. It's better not to go. It's safer not to go. You shouldn't spread it. So it was a horrible sort of time, but it was actually, at least when lockdown started, the decision was taken out of my hands. But then Laz was going to run the race, but then as more and more competitors stepped down, he was sort of not knowing whether to run it. And then actually one of the competitors, Gary Robbins, he actually said that he's not going to go because to save Laz. Laz is in one of the high risk groups, so it's not fair on all the people that could have gone to take COVID-19 to Laz. So yeah, Laz then he cancelled it, which I thought that was really good. I mean, it wouldn't have happened in the end anyway because all the parks shut and all the rest of it. So, but yeah, so Laz has sort of said we all need to apply again next year, but if we do that, he'll, obviously the people that were already in will get maybe a few points awarded to them.
You'll get an extra 2 minutes or something added to a lap.
Yeah, he'll read my essay first.
How many words do you have to write? Is there a minimum?
There's no guidelines at all. It's just write an essay on why you think you should be allowed to run the Barkley. So that's the first stressful thing that you have to sort of, because I haven't written a proper essay since school, and even then you tend to get word count. You get told whether they want 500 or 1,000 words and a bit of a brief. But and I'm not great at bigging myself up either, so I just this is what I've done.
You shared that on your blog?
No, because I don't really want people copying it. I mean, Laz, I think he wants them to be original,
but no one could copy your essay, could they? Because it would be about,
well, no, but maybe the format of it. Yeah, I couldn't find anybody else's essays, so I've not shared mine either. So yeah, just in the general rule of keeping it all quiet, I think.
One of the things that we were talking about earlier on was training for the double Paddy Buckley round was part of your training as well for the Barkley Marathon. But the double Paddy Buckley round, so 122 miles, 17,070 meters of ascent. Tell us about the double Paddy Buckley, which you did in the May 2019.
Yeah, so I came back from the Barkley and I wasn't injured. So I went sort of straight into planning for the Paddy, which I'd already got a date for. The weather wasn't great on the weekend, but it wasn't bad enough for you to cancel. And it was reasonably cool, which I do like. But I think we did have a bit of everything on the way around. The first round, I decided to do one anti-clockwise, a full round, and then turn around and do one clockwise. And yeah, the first round didn't go too badly till we went wrong off one hill about midnight, and I lost about 15 minutes and ended up in some really horrible gorse pictures. It was annoying to lose the time, but it was also, I didn't eat while this was going on, so that really affected my stomach. I started throwing up about an hour later and I couldn't eat properly. And then there's a really long leg going into Capel, which was my finish for the first round, and that just dragged on and on. And again, the clag came in and we lost a bit of time across there, and I got a bit despondent. Finishing in, I think, 23 hours, 24 minutes, I think. I was really chuffed with actually finishing one round in under 24 hours, because doing the other doubles the way I'd done them, I wasn't really sure whether I was doing it on a 24-hour schedule or not. It was just because you couldn't actually have you couldn't tell where you were. But then, I threw up in Capel, set off, and had to do the 7-hour leg all over again. And I think my lack of energy just sort of kicked in then. And I nearly caned it at the end of that leg. My support were brilliant, and they just sort of said, no, you're not, you can carry on. It doesn't matter how long you take, and which is it's all stuff I really knew, but they just reinforced it when they were talking to me. And then I think once I decided, right, I'm going to finish this come what may, I actually cheered up quite a lot, because I also knew what I needed to do to finish. I needed to eat. So I just started every 15 minutes throwing some noodles down, eating some noodles and having a gel. And I think I had 4 legs to do. And by the end I did one more leg, still stumbling around quite a bit. I was so tired. I hadn't slept then for 2 nights. This was my 3rd day. I decided, right, I'm going to have 10 minutes sleep, and that really sorted me out. And then the next 3 legs were great. I felt great. I felt quite happy. I wasn't very fast, but I just carried on going until I finished late on Sunday night.
So how many hours were you out there for?
57 and a half, I think. Yeah, 57 and a half hours. So I started at 10 o'clock on Friday and finished on about 8 o'clock on Sunday. It seems so long ago now.
It's just an incredible achievement. It really does sort of blow my mind. I also noticed something that you've done, but you've also done it with a lot of support, because did you have people sort of who came out and did sections with you, did little bits with you while running, or were you sort of out there quite a bit on your own?
Oh no, I had like 3 supporters on each leg. So again, it's very challenging to get the logistics right. I mean, Charmaine Heaton, who did all my road support, she also sorts all my supporters out and rearranges them when things go wrong, which it inevitably does. And yeah, so she was amazing. So I really didn't know a lot of what was going on behind the scenes, because I just turn up, try and eat, and then get sent off again with some more supporters. And they all just rallied round and did different legs at different times of the day. And yeah, it was really good. And I had a couple of people turn up that I wasn't expecting, like Joe Mann, who I used to coach as a junior, and he's now 24 or something. So yeah, he just sort of turned up. So it was really nice to see him. I really loved the last sort of 2 legs. I mean, my feet swelled up, were really quite painful again, but I just changed shoes, and eventually the pain just went away, I think.
What advice would you give somebody who's contemplating doing the double Paddy? What would be your top tips?
Well, get out there and learn the route so that you know it like one way and the other way. I think that's about the best, because if you think you can do the distance and the climb, it's knowing the route on the Paddy. It's a very fiddly route as it is, and going anti-clockwise. If it's not the normal way that you've done it before, you just need to know it really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicky, I want to mix things up a little bit now and ask you some quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Yep.
I think I know the answer to this question already, but are you a morning person or an evening person?
Morning. Yeah, and even more so at the moment. I seem to be wide awake with the sun coming up.
Do you set an alarm, or do you just sort of wake up naturally?
I do have an alarm, but I seem to be awake before the alarm. I mean, I tend to get a bit sleepier on a night. I don't work into the night like I hear people doing. Definitely like to be in bed at sort of like 10 o'clock. But if I have to run through the night, then that's different. I can be awake all night as well, quite happily.
Do you have a morning routine?
Yeah. I mean, even before lockdown, we always had a routine of getting up, having breakfast, walking around the cows and having a coffee. And since lockdown, I've found that a routine has really kept me going. So straight away, I sort of worked out a route. I never run every day, but I decided I was going to, because it was, well, the only reason you were supposed to be out. So yeah, I ran every day and just had a sort of plan as to what I was going to do. And I got up and again, it was quieter to run at maybe 6, half 6. So I dragged myself out of bed, out the door really. Those first few minutes were always quite hard on the legs, because I'm not used to doing that. But it really kept me going during the day. So whatever happened during the day, I'd always feel better because I'd achieved my run that morning.
What sort of distance would you do in the morning?
So Monday was long run. That was 13 miles. Tuesday was easy day and I could do what I liked. So it's usually about 5 around the golf course. Wednesday was one of the virtual races that I set up. So that was sort of 4 miles. But yeah. And then Thursday was speed, again around the golf course. Friday was long run. And then Saturday, Sunday were both virtual sort of races. So the virtual race, we set up a 4 mile. Everybody just found a 4 mile circuit of their own. And we then somebody worked out an algorithm that sorted out the distance and the climb, so that it was as if we were running the same sort of distance and climb. And then on the Sunday, it was a 1 hour score. So it was like you went out from your house and tried to find as many churches as you possibly could in an hour. It kept us all, there's about 20 of us doing it, and it kept us all entertained for a few weeks.
Are you still doing that?
Yeah, we're just doing the Saturday and the Sunday now, because as lockdowns eased and you can drive, we're actually, and more people are getting back to work and everything. The Wednesday became a bit of a sort of time constraint really for a lot of people, but we've kept the Saturday and Sunday going, and I've got about half a dozen juniors doing it, because of course they're not really back at school and they're missing all their running and their races and everything.
Are you a tea or coffee person?
That's funny, because when people ask me when I'm running, I just go, I'll say whichever one I want first, and then I'll say the other one. I tend to just have one and then the other when I'm running. First thing in the morning, it's definitely tea, and then by 10 o'clock, I'm usually needing a coffee. So I'm a bit of a both.
What about a movie? Do you have like a favourite movie that you like to watch, or a film that you've watched recently that you really enjoyed?
I'm not really a telly person. So the funny thing about the Netflix film is I never actually saw it till after I'd done the Barkley, because I was trying to download podcasts and things and got a bit annoyed with the fact that you could download something and then it wouldn't work. So when it came to the Netflix one, because I don't have Netflix, I couldn't be bothered trying to download Netflix only to find the Netflix movie wouldn't work, or I had to pay for it or something. So no movies or tellies really.
What about a book? Is there a particular book that you've enjoyed to read, or a book that you will go back to? And that, by the way, that that can be an audiobook as well.
Again, I was trying to think, because I've got quite a few running books, and I read on a night in bed, but only like 10 minutes worth of some, and that, especially during lockdown, that's just been some drivelly novel that doesn't tax me or scare me. I would not be probably ashamed to even say, I think it's even, no, I'm not even saying it.
That's okay.
I'm too embarrassed to say
That's okay. What about music? Do you is there a particular song, genre, type of music that you love and enjoy listening to?
I think so long as it's fairly sort of lively. I'm not sort of a sorrowful song person, but again, I'm quite disappointingly not very, it's not that I don't like music, but I think I've probably got about 5 CDs, and I can listen to the same CD. If I drive to Scotland, I'll just have the same CD going round and round and get round. It drives everyone else insane, but I seem to quite like it.
I do the exact same thing. Like when I found like an album or music, I mean, I remember on the Appalachian Trail, I listened to the song Chasing Cars, like just on repeat for hours and hours and hours, which is ridiculous. Now, I think I know the answer to the next question, but I could be pleasantly surprised. Are you a beach or mountain person?
Oh, definitely mountains, yeah. I did beaches when I was sort of in my early 20s, and now I can't be doing with lying on a hot beach. No, it's definitely mountains, yeah.
What about food? What's your favourite type of food to eat at home, and what's your favourite type of food to eat while you're out running?
I can't beat a baked potato with cheese and beans. So I'm mainly a home cooked person with that. Apple pie and custard, or an apple crumble for pudding. That's nice. And going out, it's either the fish chips and curry sauce, or I do like a Madras curry. I'm quite a spicy curry person. And running, I don't think I've got a dodgy stomach, but now that I've got stuff that works, I just don't change it. So again, I seem to stick with the rice puddings, the baked beans and the fruit salads, because if I've got those 3, even if I'm sick on one of them on a round, I tend to be able to just go on to the other one and eat just plenty of that.
So that's baked beans, rice pudding.
Cold, yeah, rice puddings. And I never eat rice puddings at any other time. And then fruit salads, those little pots of fruit salad.
Yeah.
They seem to, if it's hot, fruit salads are nice. If it's cold, baked beans are nice. And then rice puddings seem to settle my stomach at any time of the day.
What about rest and relaxation? What do you do to rest and relax?
Probably bake cakes.
Oh, wow.
So I was already baking quite a lot of cakes before lockdown, and then it was quite frustrating not to be able to buy flour for a couple of weeks. But I have baked quite a lot of cakes. I find that, so in the last sort of 3, when I'm tapering and I have sort of excess energy because I'm not running as much, then I tend to go on to baking cakes. I find they're quite sort of demanding. They want you to be in a good mood, and they sink if you're not in a good mood. Mine do anyway. Or maybe that's because I just forget to put some important ingredient in there.
I love it. What are the words that you live by?
I mean, I tend to use a few, not riddles, but the sort of sayings where...
Mantras?
Yeah. It's not over till the fat lady sings and things like that, really. Yeah, so that's never let your guard down when you're racing. It's not over till the fat lady sings, meaning until you've finished. So I can't think really anymore, but that's what I tend to sort of work by.
And Nicky, where's the best place for people to find more information out about you and to read more about from your blog about the different races and challenges that you've done?
I keep a little website going. I try to sort of update the news page every couple of weeks. That's runbg.co.uk, and then I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I think Nicky Spinks generally.
Why is it BG? What does the BG stand for? Runbg.co.uk.
Well, the BG was the Bob Graham.
Ah, okay, yeah.
When I was setting the website up, I was sat with my brother going, I don't know what to call my website. And he said, what about Run BG? Because you've just run a BG.
Thank you so much. And best of luck with all the rest of your races and challenges.
Catch up in a year or so.
Absolutely. Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Nicky. It is always fantastic when we go back and catch up with our previous guests. So everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. So during that episode, Nicky talked about Stephanie Case. So we have actually spoken to Stephanie twice before. Stephanie is an ultra runner, a human rights lawyer, and she's also the founder of Free to Run. Well worth listening to that episode. I have got a massive selection of interviews with different women of all ages and abilities who talk about how they get into running, what they love about it, and why they run. They share top tips and advice to encourage you to put your running shoes on and get out there. So there's a whole mixture of different running challenges, from training for a marathon to running an ultra, a 100-kilometer, a multi-stage ultra race, as well as tales of running around countries, across countries, and through countries. So I'm going to give you a list of names to listen to, and like I said, more information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com. So you can take a listen to Emma Timmis, who has run across Africa twice. We've spoken to Celine McCall, a 43-year-old married mother of two who ran the Marathon des Sables. You can listen to my episode about running the Marathon des Sables. You can take a listen to Amy Hughes, who ran 521 miles on a treadmill in a week. We've also spoken with Larry Morgan, who's an ultra endurance marathon runner, and she shares more about doing the Jungle Ultra, and Trassen, an American ultra runner who's broken 20 world records and won Western States a record 14 times. The amazing Anna McNuff, who's run the full length of New Zealand. We've talked with Nikki Kimball. We've talked with Julie Creffield from Too Fat to Run. We've spoken with the Myrna Valerio, who's an ultra marathon runner. And we've spoken with Maury O'Sullivan, who's a mountain runner, adventure racer, as well as being a new mum. And she's the author of Bump, Bike and Baby. If you're vegan, you've probably heard of Fiona Oakes, who's known as the Vegan Queen of Extreme, a British marathon runner who holds 3 world records and is an absolute beast at running at multi-day races. There's Kaz Lander, who shares more about running ultras. There's Anne-Marie Watson, who we've spoken to twice before as well, who's a phenomenal endurance athlete. Hope Virgo, who's a runner, author, and mental health campaigner. Mina Holder, she's a 36-year-old primary school teacher who ran the full length of New Zealand. There are so many guests for you to listen to, so please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com.